Sarah Wilkinson, the indefatigable campaigner for Palestine, thought that perhaps she'd met her match in the form of 12 police officers who raided her house, some of them wearing balaclavas, like terrorists. They broke her mother's urn that contained her ashes. They removed her passport. They removed her money. They arrested her and then imposed bail conditions, which were rightly the cause of revulsion all over the world. She became the first person in 2024 to be told she could never use a telephone or never use a computer again. It was a monstrous overreach by the original court, and this week these bail conditions have been lifted. And so Sarah Wilkinson is finally free. And boy, are we pleased to see her on the mother of all talk shows this evening. Sarah, there will be a big round of applause, literally, never mind metaphorically, all round the world, our global audience, to see you looking hale and hearty and, of course, as determined as ever. Anyone who thought they could break your spirit by banning you from using the telephone was a fool indeed. But in your own words, for the audience, particularly outside of social media, that hasn't followed it quite as closely, tell us what happened to you.
Hello, George. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. It is a pleasure to be on. So at about 7:10, there's a loud banging on the door. And I looked out of the window and the whole street is closed off. Various police vehicles, from Black Mariahs to ordinary police cars. Lots of plainclothes people at the door. They're going to break the door down. And so I kind of thought, well, it's pointless having the door broken down. That there's nothing you can do about this. I'm going to open the door. This is clearly an arrest. As soon as I opened the door, it was like I was sort of thrust backwards. My son was pushed against the wall, and these plainclothes counter-terrorism unit guerrillas stormed in and sort of frog marched me up the stairs. Didn't give me a time to get dressed or take any meds for my Crohn's. Didn't give me any time to do anything. I still had my dressing gown on and bare feet, and I was handcuffed so tightly that my wrists were cut. By the time we reached the station, I had sort of bloody cuts. It looked like I'd tried to sort of slash my wrists. But we didn't drive to Shrewsbury. So there was a point in this arrest where I thought, oh God, these aren't police. We're going the wrong way. So there was an element of terror in the fact that we drove probably about 30 miles the wrong way. And I did think in the back of this van, well, we weren't really able to ask to see the warrant. They wouldn't let us. They didn't really let us see any identification. So there was a point that I thought that this is an execution. So yes, that I was quite relieved actually to see the police station eventually, sort of an hour and a half later than we should have done. And then during the time, I was held for about 12 hours. But during that time I was away, they absolutely ransacked the house. They threw my son out of the house. They wanted to search it without anybody here. They upturned my mother's ashes, which literally went everywhere. We haven't been able to get the remains back into the urn. We're missing a quarter of her remains, which was one of the most horrific things I've ever done, to actually have to get a dustpan and brush for my mother's remains, because I couldn't do it any other way. But they stole money. They literally looted money, and they didn't list these items. So when you seize items, they have to be listed under police protocol. My passport was missing. The money inside my passport was missing. Clothes are missing. Flags are missing. There's a lot of items, none of which are listed. And of course, they took all the electronic devices, my phones. Obviously, I didn't have time to turn my phone off, so I was kind of concerned about this. It just all happened so quickly. But the arrest was pretty brutal, really. They considering my age, these are sort of men in their mid-30s and mid-40s, and I'm sort of 61, and I'm sure if I had grey hair and a walking stick, they might have treated me a little bit differently. But, you know, I literally was thrown in the back of this van with handcuffs that made my hands bleed, and I lost the circulation in my fingers, and no medication. So when I got to the station, I couldn't eat. They were threatening to keep me for 42 hours minimum, possibly a week. And I thought, well, with no medication, I can't eat. I can't really drink. So I was thinking, well, I'm not going to survive the week. And then they produced this medical so-called doctor who I did question her qualifications, and I question this in truth. I will question this. I'll take this up, I think, is that she didn't know how to spell Crohn's. She didn't even know how to get a pill out of a packet. And when I was being released, they finally gave me some meds, which was too late in the day, obviously. She gave me the wrong ones. And so for somebody who claims to be a doctor, it was yeah, it's very questionable. But the brutality, I think, the remarks, the interrogation was extraordinarily racist. Obviously, you have to no comment, but there was a point where I had to break the no comment and say, I'm sorry, but this line of questioning is extraordinarily racist. It didn't feel like British police questioning. We're a multicultural society. So to ask questions like, why do you think Palestinians are better than us? Why do you think they're better than white people? Why aren't white people as good as Palestinians? For me, felt like non-British questioning. And I wanted it recorded on the tape in case it did go to court, that this line of questioning is not acceptable. It's bigoted, it's racist, it's discriminatory, and actually it's quite to kind of sort of compare people for their color or their ethnicity. That didn't feel like British questioning. So there were a lot of things where the police broke protocol. They've also changed the times of the actual arrest and the house raid. They put it down as 10:30. Well, I was clearly arrested at 7:30, and that's well known. That's known by my solicitor. But they wrote down 10:30. They said they left at 2. They didn't leave till after 5 o'clock. So they've actually signed this. So I don't think that this is going to go to court because there are so many errors, so many things that I think a judge would throw out or would heavily question. I actually don't think they ever intended this to go to court. This was about terrorizing not just me as a civilian in my own home. This was terrorizing the entire top end of town. They closed the road off. People thought it was a kind of gun raid with these balaclava'd thugs running around the street, barging their way into the house. Some residents said, well, we didn't know whether we were all going to get shot at, and should we duck or should we run away? So they terrorized everyone, really. And obviously myself and my son, I think we were both very badly treated for the whole duration of the whole arrest. Once CID and the terror squad had left, I don't think Shrewsbury police knew why I was there. They didn't really seem to understand. And they said, well, we're going to have to release you. This isn't a very big station. We're not going to be keeping you for the week. We are going to release you. So, yeah, I think the whole thing, none of it felt right. I think it was too violent. I think it just didn't follow police protocol. And the act of trying to scare us as much as possible, you know, you're going to go to jail for 5 years. It could be 15 years. It might be 5 years. You'll have to disclose the phone numbers of Palestinian people you know. We're working with a British doctor on the ground trying to provide clean water and dig water wells. They wanted his name. They wanted his location. They wanted his phone number. They wanted everything. They wanted journalists, even the names of journalists that I don't actually work with, but I recognize their names. So they wanted to know the location of Palestinians by being able to make a phone call to them and then use the surveillance to track them. This was terrifying because it was a matter of life and death that I didn't give away any information. But then I was told, well, if you don't give out your passcodes and your PIN numbers and you don't give us these numbers, then it's instantly 5 years in jail. So, you know, I obviously was not going to give anything away. And I submitted myself to thinking I'm going to jail for 5 years here, minimum. I'm not giving the location of anyone away. This is a genocide. They are looking to target particular Palestinians, particularly journalists, doctors, and people that we know, our contacts, close contacts, friends. I had to be really careful. I had very, very good solicitors. So, yeah, the bail conditions, there were 7 of them, and it was no phone. So when you live in an area like this, you need to be able, we all have wood burners, so the chances of having a chimney fire are quite great. I have no way of ringing 999 for a fire engine, no way to ring an ambulance, no way of contacting my grandkids on the first day of school. Couldn't even use my TV because that actually is a smart TV. So technically it uses the internet. Couldn't use anyone else's electronic device. I mean, it goes on. I couldn't use camera, couldn't photograph the devastation. And they said, and if you do use an electronic device of any sort whatsoever, or try to buy a new phone, we will know because we're monitoring you. So, yeah, it was, I couldn't even shop, no travel documents. So that originally was train tickets and bus tickets, which they did retract by the time I was released, but no travel documents as in a passport, which they denied that they had seized. So I had to surrender my passport in 7 days, or I faced 5 years in jail once again, which could turn out to be 15. But they had taken my passport, but I couldn't prove it. So,
well, look, if I had any hair, it would be standing on end at what you have just told us. And there are so many questions that arise from it, some big, some small. What conceivable interest would it be to the police in Shrewsbury what the location of a Palestinian journalist in Gaza was? How is that a matter for British law enforcement? I'm sure they didn't explain that to you, but if they did, you'll no doubt correct me. But going back to the big picture, all of this was over what? Tweets? Facebook posts? What?
But it was a year's worth of, originally, what they said, it was a year's worth of tweets from the, I think the first one was from the 10th of October right up to about the 29th of August. And I thought, oh my God, that's about 11,000 tweets. So I did think, oh, crikey. I bet one of those tweets, maybe I lost my temper or I was angry what was happening in Gaza. Possibility of 11,000 tweets having one item wrong. But in the end, they'd narrowed that down to about 500. And then even during this sort of 3-hour interrogation, there wasn't time to go through 500. So they narrowed that down to 300. And then they questioned me on about 11 tweets, which, there's a whole booklet of tweets, but they're all journalistic. I've got a press pass. I've got an international press pass. So, and I tend to quote the journalists. So I was kind of confident that, everything was going to be fine with the tweets. I actually think that was an excuse. I think you're right. What you say, what interest did Shrewsbury? Well, Shrewsbury police didn't have any. I think the people who interrogated me, I know there was a slight Mossad Shin Bet type feel to it. The line of questioning, the statement about why are Palestinians better than white people, that's going to stick with me for a long time, because I don't think British police in this multicultural society, no matter how bad police can be, would say that and would be heard to say it in court, because obviously this is all being taped. So it was at that point I thought, this isn't going to court. There's no way that question will be in court and a judge will go, that's an okay question. That just wasn't an okay question. So I kind of started to realize this isn't for court. This is purely for terror. This is purely to scare me into silence, to shut me up, or to make me go off and do something else and not focus on this Israeli genocide. It's to stop me informing people, like I have been doing for, 15 years or whatever, on X, of what is happening on the ground in Gaza. This is to terrify me, but it's also hoping then that I might maybe inform the people on the ground in Gaza. I've been asked about you. They've given me your names. You know, they wanted to know everything about where they were located, how could they reach them, and they can reach them through my phone. So there's a disclosure thing. I always forget the name. I think it's called a Risha disclosure, where if you don't give your PIN numbers out, it is this instant 5-year jail. So you're left with that very quickly. I had to sort of, all right, I'm not going to see my grandchildren again for 5 years at least. They'll be teenagers when I get out. And I'm probably not going to see my ex-husband again because he's ill. And I don't think he's going to survive 5 years. So, yeah, it was horrific, but it didn't feel like British police questioning. And it was very long.
The fact they didn't know the way to the Shrewsbury Nick would certainly tell you they weren't local, right?
Well, I don't know whether that was done deliberately to actually scare me more. I think they did. They had a sat-nav. I kept seeing Shrewsbury left, Shrewsbury. I mean, we kept passing the Shrewsbury signs. I thought, oh my God, we're not going to Shrewsbury. And, you know, it's that point you realize, did you actually, when you're being arrested, how do you actually ask if police are authentic? They've slapped handcuffs on you. They're dragging you downstairs. They're dragging you into the back of the van. You can't really sort of say, oh, who are you? They're not going to reply. There was nobody really filming this. I didn't know if they had cameras on. I mean, most were plain clothes. So it was at the point when we were driving the wrong way. Yeah, I just thought, oh, this is an execution. I'm being taken to, I mean, this is a rural area. I'm being taken somewhere where they're just going to put a gun to my head and that's the end of me. So actually, that is what I started believing, because it just didn't. Yeah, if you ring 999, you would like to think that the police know where they're going around here. And also, I'm nearer Shrewsbury, obviously going the opposite direction. We added another hour onto the journey. So it's an hour of terror. And I think that was done to break me down, somehow make me so terrified that by the time we reach the police station, I'm so relieved that I spill everything and I say everything. But, you know, I've been arrested 26 times now, and that isn't going to work. But I mean, it rattled me, because I realized we haven't really asked for any ID. We don't really know, are these police? And I did question that. So yeah, I was so relieved. This is the first time I've been relieved to see the police station, the sign.
To see the inside of a police station. Now, you are a completely non-violent peace and justice activist. They're going to find it difficult in all the circumstances, as you've described them, to take this to trial. What's your current legal position? Are you on bail? How did they justify the bail conditions and the dropping of them? What is likely to happen next, and when?
Okay, there's a few questions there. They didn't justify the bail conditions, but my Kelly's solicitors from Brighton, who are incredible, and I have to say, you know, they worked really, really hard trying to express how inhuman it is to leave somebody in an area like this without any phone, without any contact, without any TV, without any ability to even buy food or even order a taxi. Actually, we don't really have taxis here, but, you know, I couldn't. I think my big thing was, oh God, you know, if I need an ambulance or I'm ill, or somebody else needs an ambulance, I can't ring. I need my phone. So they didn't really justify it, but I think Shrewsbury police were the ones who dropped these 6 conditions out of the 7. There's still one thing that I can't do, but they allow me to use social media, providing I don't do that one thing. And so literally all the bail conditions just fizzled, because they are inhuman. I did have, look, you guys supported me hugely, and I need to thank everybody who wrote to their MPs on my behalf. I've got to thank you, George, because you put it out there, and you have a large following, and I think people were shocked. And Crispin Flintoff brought me a kitchen's worth of food, and he also raised the money to replace the cash that was looted. The support has been incredible. But I think for Shrewsbury Police, it was an utter nightmare. They just, they didn't want this attention. They didn't want to be made out to be the sort of guerrillas that they were.
The Gestapo.
It's like the Stasi, this thing where we're watching you. I was followed the other day. I went to get a new phone, and I know when I'm being followed. I'm savvy enough to recognize that this guy in this particular pair of trousers has been getting on and off the train. Literally, every time I got off the train to see if he got off the train, and he did. And I got back on, and he got back on. I got off at the next station, he got off. And so very quickly, all right, I'm already followed. So I managed to give him the slip. But, this following, this monitoring, it is very, very Stasi-like. It's an invasion of my privacy. It's an invasion of civilian life, and being able to exist out here. There are very long public transport journeys involved in going anywhere. So following me is quite difficult, because you can see you're being followed all the way. But yeah, I managed to give him the slip, and I didn't see him again. But yeah, why are you now following me? Because you've dropped the bail. I do have to return in November to hand myself in. I am going to apply for my passport back, because that was actually part of the bail conditions. So now Shrewsbury Police have confessed to actually having taken it, and I don't have to surrender it. I can now apply for it back. I won't get any of my devices back. And if they are, they'll be tracked or bugged, or they'll be damaged or broken, which normally happens. I doubt I'll get them back. So I've had to replace everything, or start replacing everything. So they took about £7,000 worth of equipment, and they took other people's equipment as well, not just mine, demanding the passcodes and PIN numbers for computers that I don't even own, and threatening me with 5 years in jail for not giving out PIN numbers to computers I've never had in this house. So there were things added to the list, which felt like entrapment. Are they going to add things onto this computer and then say, well, here you are, here's you, and here's a phone call list, and here's photographs you shouldn't have on your laptop? But it wasn't my laptop. And no, and we can't, we don't know whose it was. We think that maybe it was just added sort of menacingly. And I did think, oh, they're going to put things on this laptop. And my son, of course, signed it off, because how does he know what I have and what I don't have? So this poor lad sort of signed it off, and he sort of thought, oh, crikey, I've said that you own this HP laptop, but yeah, I've never owned an HP laptop. So yeah, we did think there's a lot of entrapment in a lot of these things that happened. Surrendering the passport, HP laptop doesn't belong to me. We thought we may be bugged, so we've had a bug sweep. So we had a company come round, and they spent about 5 hours x-raying the whole house. They haven't bugged me. So here's another question. Was raiding my house worth it? Do you really think that I am a terrorist if you're not going to even bother bugging me? So the fact that they release you on bail, they say, go back home, they clearly don't think that you're any threat. So what was this all about? The destruction of my mother's ashes. Why? Why would, I mean, it's desecration. And we've seen this from the Israelis, have we not? The desecration of human remains. There was a lot of things that were similar. I'm not in any way saying that what I experienced is anything compared to what the Palestinians have been through, but there were a lot of similar sort of things. What was the point of it? If you really don't think I'm a threat, you've let me go. I can now have my passport back, so technically I can travel. you can't possibly think that I'm a threat. So why go through all this? Why not just ask me to surrender myself to the police station? And I think the same thing happened with Richie Medhurst, where, you know, he was arrested on the plane, and he said, well, why didn't they just wait until I got to passport control? It's about display. It's like peacocking, that we can come into anyone's home, let everybody see how terrifying we are, and none of you will want to raise a Palestinian flag again or talk about Palestine, because this is what will happen to you. And I think that that was the motive, rather than getting me in court, because I haven't lost a court case yet. So I think that I could win this court case based on the fact that they botched so many things up. So,
well, nobody watching this interview will be in any doubt at all about that. I could speak to you all night, but alas, we'll have to leave it there. You are our Joan of Arc, Sarah Wilkinson, activist and campaigner for Palestine. May God preserve you.
Thank you for your support, George.
No, it's my duty. It's my privilege, my honour to be your supporter.